You are listening to the Vocal Technologist. Spoken tech for your ears.
Look, I was having a squiz at a tech job board the other day. Do not ask me why. Just doing a bit of market research. You know how it is. And I came across this listing for what looked like a generic product designer role.
Right, just your standard wireframes and user research.
Exactly. Standard stuff, or so I thought. But then I started reading the fine print in the requirements. They wanted React experience. They wanted Python scripting. They wanted experience fine-tuning large language models. And I am sitting there thinking, hang on a minute, 5 years ago, this was a senior full-stack engineer role. Now, it is just design.
It is straight up bonkers. We are seeing the total engineering repeatification of the entire workforce. You know, we used to have these neat little silos. Marketers wrote copy, sales made calls, engineers wrote the code.
Nice and tidy.
Yeah, too, right?
Yeah.
Now, you have got marketers running SQL queries to segment their own data sets because they cannot wait around for the data team, and sales ops writing Python scripts to automate their CRM. I mean, if you cannot spin up a Docker container, are you even employable in tech anymore?
I am mostly taking the mickey, but the bar has definitely shifted heaps. But here's the paradox I want us to unpack. While the individual skill floor is raising, meaning everyone needs to be a bit technical, the barrier to actually starting a company has completely collapsed.
That is the tension right there. The technical bottleneck is gone. Tools like Replit, or even just really sophisticated prompting with a model like Claude or GPT-4 can get you a minimum viable product in a weekend. But that creates a terrifying new reality for founders.
Because if you can build it in a weekend, so can 500 other people.
Spot on. When building becomes trivial, winning becomes exponentially harder.
So we are going to explore this new reality. We have got a stack of reading material here that suggests the old playbooks for software companies are literally crumbling. We are going to look at the instability of SaaS, the return to first principles, and why a good yarn might actually be worth more than a perfect spreadsheet right now.
It is a massive shift.
This is Vocal Technologist, and we are keen to get into it.
Let us get amongst it.
I want to start with the money side of things. For the last 15 years, the absolute gospel of the tech world was SaaS, software as a service. And the reason venture capitalists loved it was one specific word: durability.
Right, the annuity model.
Exactly. You sign a customer, they subscribe, and they stay for 5, 7, maybe 10 years. But we were looking at some data that suggests that era is looking incredibly shaky.
It really is. The example that stops you in your tracks is PagerDuty. Now, for those who do not know, PagerDuty is essentially digital infrastructure plumbing. When a server crashes at 3 in the morning, this is the tool that pages the on-call engineer. It is critical infrastructure, and they are doing $500 million in annual recurring revenue, $500 million.
In the old world, say around 2019 or so, that is a massive business. That is a unicorn 10 times over.
You would certainly reckon. But look at where they're actually trading. Their valuation is hovering around $1 billion. That is just a 2x multiple on their revenue.
Hold on, just 2x. The median public SaaS company usually trades at what, 6, 7, maybe 10 times revenue during a boom.
Even higher for high-growth companies. But a 2x multiple is essentially the market saying, we do not believe this revenue is real. Or rather, we do not believe this revenue will be here in 3 years. The core assumption of venture capital is that you pay a high price today because that revenue stream pays out forever.
But we are entering a phase where competitive advantages that used to last a decade might only last 6 months.
Exactly. We are looking at the heat death of SaaS. It sounds dramatic, like a science fiction novel, but the logic is pretty sound. If I can replicate your core software features using a team of 3 AI agents and some clever prompting, your moat just evaporated.
So your protection against competitors is basically gone. The release of models like Claude 3.5 Sonnet was a real inflection point for this, wasn't it? It is not just generating text anymore. It is generating robust code.
Spot on. If software is cheap to produce, it becomes a commodity. And the law of macroeconomics is brutal. When something becomes a commodity, the price trends towards zero.
But does that mean a giant legacy company like Salesforce or Workday just goes to zero overnight? That seems pretty unlikely. They're embedded everywhere.
No, they do not die a violent, sudden death. They die a quiet one. They have multi-year contracts. They have enterprise inertia. But the thesis here is that they become dumb pipes.
Dumb pipes?
Yeah, they become the back-end database that nobody actually looks at, while the AI native companies, the new agent substrates, become the interface where the actual work happens, and value always accrues to the interface.
We are already seeing the big players scramble. You look at Workday, their CEO has pivoted the company narrative 3 times in 3 quarters. That is a clear sign of a leadership team that feels the ground shifting and just cannot quite find their footing.
It is the panic of the incumbent. And it is not just about the big end of town. If you are a startup building right now, even the fundamental way you charge money is breaking. I was reading a piece from Metronome, they do billing infrastructure, and they are arguing that the traditional $20 per user per month model is completely dead.
That makes a lot of sense. Because if you think about it, if I am using an AI tool, I am not just paying for a login. I am consuming compute.
Yeah.
I am burning through tokens. It is much more like electricity than software.
Precisely. You are paying for a utility. If you launch an AI feature today and you do not completely change your billing stack, you are effectively setting money on fire. You have different foundation models costing different amounts, variable usage rates, token limits. You cannot manage that on a static spreadsheet anymore.
It is like trying to charge for water by counting how many taps a house has rather than just putting a meter on the pipe.
That is a cracking analogy. Metronome points out that billing needs to be a runtime system now. It needs to compute the price live constantly as the software is being used. If you have to manually adjust invoices or create a new star-keeping unit every time you launch a feature, your operational drag is going to completely kill your margins.
So we have margin compression on one side and massive billing headaches on the other.
Yeah.
But then we look at the stock market, and it seems like investors are reacting with pure adrenaline and fear. Did you see what they were calling the disaster?
Oh, I love that name. The disaster refers to that brutal week recently where cybersecurity stocks just fell off an absolute cliff.
It was wild to watch. Anthropic announces Claude Code Security, which is basically an AI that helps write secure code, and the market absolutely lost its mind. By the following Friday, the cyber ETF had dropped 5%, qualities fell 12%.
And here's the kicker with that whole situation. Anthropic did not even mention identity management. They did not mention access control. But companies like Okta and SailPoint, which do exactly those things, still tank 10 or 11%.
So is the market just being totally irrational? Or do they know something we do not?
It is panic pricing for sure, but it is based on a very logical fear. Investors hear that AI can fix code vulnerabilities and they extrapolate massively. They think, well, if the AI writes perfect code and tests it before it is even deployed, do we even need these third-party scanning tools anymore?
They're pricing in the total obsolescence of the application layer.
Exactly. That $10 billion opportunity for scanning code might just disappear entirely. However, and this is key for you if you are building in this space, real infrastructure moats are still wide open. Identity, permissioning, the deep plumbing of security, that is not going away just because a large language model can write a neat unit test.
So the easy money companies, the ones that just sit on top and scan and report, they are in deep trouble. But the deep tech is safe.
For now, yes. But it brings us to the existential question for anyone building a company today. If the code is easy to copy and the basic features are getting steamrolled by foundation models, what is the actual moat? What protects your business from being cloned by next week?
I have seen this term non-code moats popping up a lot in the reading we did. The idea that you need to build things an agent simply cannot scrape or replicate.
This is exactly the discussion happening in every boardroom right now. The hard truth is that AI capabilities themselves are not a source of defensibility. Just because you use an AI to do something cool, I can use the exact same API to do the exact same thing tomorrow. The defensibility has to move to becoming the system of record.
Can you define that for us? System of record.
It means you own the end-to-end workflow and the data. You are not just a tool someone dips into for a quick task. You are the place where the actual work lives. Think about Salesforce again. Everyone complains about the interface, but every enterprise uses it. Why? Because that is where 10 years of customer data lives.
Right. An AI agent can clone the Salesforce interface in a day, but it cannot clone the decade of customer data and the intricate, messy human workflows built around it.
Spot on. And it is about trust, too. We used to have that old saying, nobody gets fired for buying IBM. Now the saying is, nobody gets fired for sticking with the platform where all our critical data already lives safely.
Trust really is the ultimate non-code mode. You can build things and an agent cannot scrape, like scale, market dominance, community, and familiarity. An AI can clone your pricing model and your user interface. It absolutely cannot clone the brand reputation you have built up over 5 years of delivering for customers.
It cannot clone the community of users who advocate for you in their own networks. So we are moving from a world where what you can build is the main differentiator to a world where who actually trusts you is the differentiator.
Which, arguably, has always been the fundamental truth of business. But cheap capital and novel technology masked it for a while. We thought the tech itself was the product. But the tech was just the delivery mechanism for the value. Now that the delivery mechanism is cheap and ubiquitous, the underlying value, the relationships, this specific industry context, that is all exposed as the only thing that matters. This shifts a massive amount of pressure onto the founder's psychology. If the tech is easier to build, the person driving the ship matters infinitely more. I want to look at this comparison we found between the mercenary and the missionary founder. It feels a bit like a Silicon Valley cliche, but I reckon it is actually more relevant now than it ever has been.
It's a classic distinction, absolutely, but the AI era weaponizes it. The mercenary is the founder who is optimizing entirely for valuation and the exit. They look at the market, they see the AI for law firms is hot this quarter, and they build it. They don't care about lawyers, they just want to flip the company to Google in 2 years.
They are the ones pitching Uber for dog walking just because the metrics looked good in a pitch deck.
Right. And then you have the missionary. They are obsessed with a specific problem. They identify with it deeply. They are not trying to flip the company. They are trying to fundamentally change how the world works in that specific domain.
The most obvious examples are always Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos.
Because they fit the archetype perfectly. Look at Bezos in the early days of Amazon. He was willing to be misunderstood by Wall Street for long periods of time. That is classic missionary behavior. A mercenary pivots their business model as soon as the stock price drops or the trend shifts. A missionary doubles down because they actually believe in the long-term vision.
There's that famous story about Apple, where the finance team would bring Jobs a spreadsheet saying a certain design decision for the iPhone did not make financial sense, and he would just ignore it and do it anyway. Complete rule-breaking decisiveness.
And that prioritization of product and customer trust over short-term economics is exactly what builds those non-code moats we were just talking about. Customers are not stupid. They can smell a mercenary from a mile away. In a world of infinite AI clones, if I feel like you are just trying to extract maximum value from me, I will switch to your cheaper clone tomorrow.
But if I feel like you are on a genuine mission to solve my problem, I will stick with you through the bugs and the price hikes. There is a litmus test for this that I found really useful for any founders who might be listening. It is about how you make strategic choices.
Oh, I love this test. It is wonderfully simple. If the opposite of your strategic choice sounds completely dumb, then it is not a real choice.
Here's an example of that.
Okay, take the classic corporate value statement, we put customers first. What is the exact opposite of that? We treat customers like garbage. No company is ever going to choose that. So saying you put customers first is not a strategy. It is just table stakes. It is marketing fluff.
So what does a real strategic choice actually look like?
Bootstrapped versus venture funded. That is a real choice. The opposite of taking venture capital money is bootstrapping the business yourself. And both are completely valid paths with very different trade-offs. Or choosing to build a platform versus a point solution, or being sales-led versus product-led.
You have to pick a lane where the other lane is also a perfectly valid business decision. It is just not the one you are taking.
Exactly. And that is incredibly uncomfortable for a lot of people. It forces you to actually sacrifice something. Strategy is sacrifice. If you are not giving something up, you are not making a choice. You are just trying to be everything to everyone. And in the current market, that is exactly how you lose.
Speaking of focus and sacrifice, let us talk about metrics. Because in the early days of a company, especially now with all these new observability tools, it is so easy to just drown in data.
It is the dashboard trap. You have got Google Analytics, Mixpanel, Stripe, maybe an LLM observability tool, monitoring your token spend. You are tracking daily active users, monthly churn, bounce rate, feature adoption.
I was reading the story about the founder of Hotel Tonight, Sam Shank. Apparently, at his first 2 startups, he tracked something like 80 different metrics on a massive dashboard.
And both of those early startups failed completely.
Exactly. So by the time he started Hotel Tonight, he decided to go radical. He picked one single metric for the entire company, total transactions. That was it.
And that clarifies the entire organization. If every engineer, marketer, and product manager in the company knows the absolute only number that matters is total transactions, every single decision gets filtered through that lens. Does this new feature increase transactions? No. Then we simply do not build it.
Slack had a really specific one in their early days, too.
The magic number. They found that if a team sent 2,000 messages on the platform, they had a 93% retention rate. They basically never churned after that point. So the whole company aligned around getting a new team to that 2,000 message mark as fast as possible. It was not about tracking signups or immediate revenue. It was entirely about that core engagement hook.
Airbnb did the same thing with nights booked. But getting to that core metric often requires doing things that absolutely do not scale. I want to get into this concept of the forward deployed engineer, or FDE. This feels like it is making a massive comeback right now.
This is huge in the AI space today. The FDE is not a traditional sales engineer. They are not just turning up and giving polished product demos. These are actual high-level developers who embed deeply with the customer to build out the last mile of the product.
So they are basically finishing the software build inside the customer's own environment.
Spot on. Because with AI, integration is incredibly messy. It is probabilistic. It is not plug and play like the old SaaS tools used to be. You need someone on site who can code, who can debug, who can figure out why the foundation model is hallucinating on this one specific enterprise dataset.
That sounds incredibly expensive and almost impossible to scale across hundreds of customers.
It is both of those things. It is super high touch, but it is how you cross the chasm from having a cool Twitter demo to providing actual enterprise value. There's this brilliant story about Lyra, the mental health startup that went through Y Combinator.
Right, so everyone else in their Y Combinator batch is frantically trying to automate everything. They are building bots to do outbound sales, bots to handle user onboarding. They are trying to be as low touch as possible because that is the classic Silicon Valley playbook.
And Lyra goes the exact opposite way, completely against the grain. The founder did intense manual, high-touch work. He was practically living with the early customers. He was doing things that were totally unscalable just to get the product right.
And the result of that manual, Yaka.
They went from $20,000 to $700,000 in annual recurring revenue in just 6 weeks.
6 weeks, that is just absurd growth.
It is exponential. And the core lesson is that sometimes doing the unscalable thing, doing that manual grunt work, is the absolute only way to really understand what the customer needs. You simply cannot automate empathy. You cannot automate that deep, intuitive understanding of a customer's pain point.
It feels like we are circling right back to that idea of the missionary founder. The missionary is the one willing to do the tedious grunt work because they care about the outcome. The mercenary just wants to build the onboarding bot and cash the venture check.
Precisely. And in a world where the bots themselves are becoming a commodity, the human who is willing to roll up their sleeves and do the unscalable work becomes the primary differentiator.
I want to pivot to something a bit more abstract, but I reckon it is equally important. The narrative. We are entering what some people are calling the jump ball era.
This is a fascinating concept. The idea is that the traditional mechanisms for establishing truth in business have completely broken down.
What do you mean by mechanisms for truth?
I mean, things like financial models, expert consensus, institutional trust. We used to look at a detailed discounted cash flow model and say, okay, this is exactly what the company is worth. Or we would look at a big analyst report and agree that this is the best technology in the market.
And now that is all out the window.
Now it is an absolute free-for-all. It is a jump ball in a basketball game. The ball is in the air and anyone can grab it. Nobody actually knows how to value an AI company right now. Is it worth 2 times revenue or 50 times revenue? Nobody even knows if the underlying technology will exist in its current form in 12 months. In that vacuum of certainty, the person who wins is simply the one who tells the most compelling story.
So narrative actually beats numbers.
Narrative absolutely beats numbers right now. Look at the public markets. Look at how meme stocks move entirely on sentiment. Look at how private AI companies are valued purely based on their potential rather than their trailing revenue. For a founder, especially a deeply technical one, this is incredibly uncomfortable.
Because most founders are engineers at heart. They like logic. They like predictable spreadsheets. They do not like storytelling because they think it's just marketing fluff.
Right. They think a good product should just speak for itself. But in the jump ball era, if you cannot articulate your story clearly, you do not exist. If your sales team is telling the market one story and your product team is building towards another story, that is not a communication problem. That is a fundamental strategy problem. It means you do not actually know what you are building or why.
There is a really good practical test for this that we found in the reading.
I highly recommend every single listener try this today. Record yourself explaining what your company does to a complete outsider, someone who knows absolutely nothing about your industry.
Just open the voice memo app on your phone.
Open the voice memo app and talk for 2 minutes. If you cannot explain your core value proposition clearly and compellingly in under 2 minutes, you have failed. You have serious work to do.
That is tough. Most technical people will ramble for 10 minutes just about the features and the architecture.
You need to be able to distill all of that complexity into a narrative that resonates instantly, because you are competing for attention in a world that is drowning in chatter and AI-generated clutter. If you cannot hook them in 2 minutes, you have lost them to someone who can.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with one final, slightly nerdy thought that I came across in our research stack. It is about file systems.
Oh, the file system as a database concept. This is the ultimate irony of the current tech cycle.
It really is. We are so used to building these massively complex architectures, SQL databases, GraphQL APIs, microservices, dedicated vector stores, but there is this growing movement towards just using the local file system.
It makes so much sense when you think about AI agents. An AI does not think in neat rows and columns like a traditional relational database. It thinks in text and tokens.
Right. The idea is that an AI agent works significantly better with just a directory full of plain markdown files or YAML files. I saw a project recently that was running a full personal operating system for agents using just 80+ markdown files. No database server. No complex API routing, just files in a folder.
It is the ultimate return to simplicity. We spent 20 years building these incredibly complex data layers to manage scale, and now it turns out the best data layer for the next generation of artificial intelligence might just be a standard folder on your desktop.
It is funny, isn't it? We started the conversation talking about the engineerification of everything, with marketers writing Python scripts, and we ended by saying, actually, maybe just use a plain text file.
That is the beautiful cycle of technology. We complicate things until they break under their own weight, and then we simplify them until they actually work again.
So what does this all mean for you, the person listening to this, while you commute or do the dishes? It means the game is fundamentally changed. The technical barriers to entry are down, which means the competition is absolutely everywhere. The moats are moving away from code and towards community and trust. And your ability to tell a compelling story is now your most important asset.
Do not rely on the spreadsheet to save you. Build trust, own the entire customer workflow, and for heaven's sake, keep your billing architecture as simple as possible.
Sound advice. Go build something real, tell a good yarn, and maybe, just maybe, check if you can run your whole startup on a few markdown files. Thanks for tuning in. We will catch you next time.
Catch you later.
Spoken Tech for your ears.